Previously on the Rubin Report.
Change diabetes to live beaties.
We just resurrect Johnny Carson.
Both sides, there are people who are extremists.
If Jimmy Kimmel has a webcam, he could do a show like this.
Every night has a right to come into any house that wants to watch.
'Cause I'm a tough guy.
All right, guys, we are finishing up, obviously, a very difficult week, but I couldn't be more pleased and thrilled and elated, actually, to have my two guests today, two friends of mine, friends of the show, and friends of Charlie's. Isabel Brown, of course, of the Isabel Brown Show on the Daily Wire, and Andy No, the senior editor at Post Millennial. Guys, it's been a rough week. We did a little bit of download off camera before we're starting this, and I think we're all just we're just going to play this live right now and just hopefully get everybody into the weekend in better spirits. But Isabel, let me start with you because you worked at Turning Point. I met you at a Turning Point event many, many years ago. You knew Charlie really well. We'll throw in some images of you guys doing things over the years. I've watched a bunch of your stuff this week, and we're feeling like the exact same way. Also, some people know that your husband Brock worked for me for years. So like these worlds just keep colliding, and then we end up having to talk about this stuff on camera, which is a little weird. How you feeling, 8 or 9 days later, and where do you think we're at with all this?
Yeah, Dave, I keep saying in a lot of these interviews, it still doesn't really quite feel real for those of us who know Charlie. I feel like I go through phases every few days or every few hours where it sinks in and it sets in that he's really gone. And then a couple hours later, I'm like, oh, I'll just see him in a few weeks at the next Turning Point thing. Or I'm sure his show will be back live with him at the microphone tomorrow. So I think that's just a normal part of grief, and we're all navigating that for sure. But beyond that, I think the world is feeling that way because truly Charlie Kirk represented something so much bigger than himself. He often used to tell me over the years, even back when I was a student that he was mentoring and encouraging to get into the commentary space, to follow certain people who were the benchmark ideological leaders of the conservative movement. And it would depend on the year who he would say and who he would name for that. But I really think it was Charlie. And I don't know that he was fully self-aware of that, but truly he set the moral tone for the next generation of what we believed in, what our values were, what we got up to fight for every day. And that transcended to those older than us as well. So we're devastated, obviously, at the personal and global level. I think in our community is really feeling this loss. As you mentioned, I have a very personal story to Charlie. I owe my career to him, certainly. I would be a doctor if he hadn't plucked me out of obscurity on my college campus in Colorado State to encourage me to take a different career path. My husband, Brock, who worked for you as well, and I met while working for Turning Point USA at a TPUSA conference, just like so many other hundreds of married families now. And our beautiful daughter wouldn't exist today if it weren't for the bravery and courage of Charlie Kirk. So we certainly are mourning and we're devastated, but looking forward this weekend to gathering together with people who knew and loved him and celebrating his life together.
Absolutely, and I can't wait to give you a hug on Sunday at the memorial. Andy, you didn't know Charlie as personally well as Isabel, but you did plenty of Turning Point events, and the politics and the culture wars that you've been talking about for years are extremely intimately related to all of this. We'll have a little bit more on that in a second, but do you have a specific recollection of Charlie or of any of the times he invited you there where your politics maybe didn't line up the way mine didn't for years with him, but he always welcomed guys like us into what he was building?
So I'm speaking to you half a day after Donald Trump announced that he would be designating Antifa a terrorist organization. I have more to say about that, but in some bizarre way, actually, it was Antifa who brought Charlie and I together, because in 2019, after I was beaten and hospitalized, it was him or someone on his team invited me to my first TPUSA event, and it was in DC. They really wanted me to speak. I had no public speaking experience. I was this quiet, no-name person that nobody knew in Portland, Oregon, who posted videos on X. And Charlie was very insistent that, okay, if you don't speak, can you at least come on stage so we can say thank you to you. And that gesture meant so much to me. And it was my first time seeing TPUSA attendees. I remember going out and I wasn't expecting a standing ovation. I didn't think I deserved it or anything. And they did it. And I was taken aback by how young many of the faces were. I think there were a lot of high schoolers and even middle schoolers in attendance at that time. It was in DC in 2019. And last night I was uploading some interview I did on my YouTube, and then like in my video recommendations, it popped up an old interview that I did with Charlie on his show a few years ago. And I just get, when I think about what happened, it makes, I have this feeling of fury, like somebody really, a very good person was taken from us, and taken in such a brutal way and a senseless way. And I'm still, I mean, I've been running 100 miles an hour a day, working, reporting, there's so much going on, and I'm doing that. But then like these moments that I pause and think, I have a lot of anger, and I hope that very soon, and then I can reflect more so on, I know what he would want his legacy to be, which is which we can see in the memorials that have happened all over. I went to the memorial that was in London, so his reach was very quite global. And I hate speaking about him in the past tense like this, and I hate that. There have been a lot of people who have been saying thank you to me for my reporting on Antifa, because some of them feel that I deserve a lot of the credit for the current administration prioritizing this terrorist network. But I think it was really Charlie who brought it past that finish line at the end. His assassination happened in the context of so many Antifa attacks on TPUSA events, on his own events that he's done at campuses. And people forget, because in America, we've normalized political violence against the left. There's no reporting when students who are tabling get the table turned over and somebody smashes a drink on their face or punches them in the face. That doesn't get any media coverage. And people just think that type of dehumanization is normal. And I think that that's sort of the wider context of maybe how I interpret and understand some of these messages and evidence allegedly from the assassin suspect.
Right. So I want to get to some of that and the connection, because you really are the guy that was sort of uncovering the Antifa and what you call Trantifa, which is the weird gender identity connection to that. So I want to cover some of that. And I think what you said is right. Like, there's a weird moment that we're all having right now. Isabel, you and I were texting about earlier, the emotional part of this is like we all want to mourn our friend, and then there is this feeling of anger, and also, Andy, what you just described as this asymmetry feeling where we've just become accustomed to, people on the right just do get their tables flipped over, or if the three of us, which has happened many times, you speak at a college campus, it's just baked in that they're going to pull the fire alarm or something. But let's put some of that aside for a moment and focus on where Turning Point is going at the moment, because I think that's going to be a key part in moving this forward in a positive sense. They tweeted this out yesterday. The Turning Point board has unanimously elected Erika Kirk as the new CEO and chair of the board. In prior discussions, Charlie expressed to multiple executives that this is what he wanted in the event of his death. And let me throw to a video of Erika when she was on Charlie's radio show not too long ago, and they were talking about who is more conservative of the two of them.
My wife joins us, Erika Kirk,
Hi,
the beautiful,
everyone.
Legendary Erika.
I love you so much.
I love you.
You're my best friend.
Welcome to the Charlie Kirk Show. We have asked the audience for questions. You pick one.
Who is more conservative and why?
Erika.
Yes.
By far. Not even close. I am a moderate compared to Erika.
Andrew always jokes that once you got married to me, you got more based.
That's true. That is true. No, Erika is very conservative. Do you think having kids made you more conservative?
100%. Which I didn't think was possible. But 100%. Absolutely.
And do you
and
think...
a better wife.
Mm-hmm.
Isabel, I actually only met Erika once. It was at a wedding. We sat next to each other and we had a really nice time. It was before they were married. Unfortunately, we couldn't make it to their wedding. Her taking the mantle of this thing right now amidst what has happened here, 8 or 9 days later. It's almost like unthinkable that she even had the bandwidth to be willing to accept that. And who knows what it means, whether there'll be obviously other people will help guide her and everything else. But if this guy thought he was going to end the movement, I mean, he just ignited the movement.
He absolutely did, Dave. I couldn't have said that better myself. And, Erika Kirk is an amazing woman. She has very intentionally, I think, really focused her efforts on their family and in supporting Charlie's mission behind the scenes for the last few years, devoting herself entirely to supporting what he knew was possible to change the world and to save the country and really ignite this next generation. But you heard her in her speech just 2 days after Charlie was so violently taken from us. She was devastated. She was heartbroken. She was trying to reason with, how do I explain to my 3-year-old that daddy's on a work trip with Jesus, which makes me cry every time thinking about it. But you also saw this steadfast resolve in her that she was ready to run into battle on behalf of her late husband and on behalf of this movement. I love seeing all of these clips resurfacing. This is just one of many that are going viral this week of Charlie and Erika on his show, or them in their personal lives, him telling his daughter how they met and how he knew that was going to be the mother of his children. You saw this concept of what we believe in marriage, that 2 souls, 2 fleshes become one flesh, that 2 individuals really do bind together for eternity. And I see so much of Charlie in Erika, especially in her steadfast resolve during that speech addressing the nation, which I actually had to ask my parents. I don't know that we've ever had a moment in American history like that after a high-profile assassination, that the widow addresses the nation almost immediately to say, we are not backing down. We are not going anywhere. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry. It gave me chills to hear her say that. And I know that she has so much strength, not because of her own accord and not because this isn't difficult for her, because of course it is. Her whole world has just been torn inside out and completely devastated, but because she has the wherewithal and the fortitude to look up toward God and to thank him for every second she had with Charlie, and to know that her mission and her vocation from above is just now beginning.
Yeah, I mean, her ability to go into that studio, 2 or 3 days later and give that speech, that in and of itself was, I mean, there actually aren't words for it. Extraordinary, whatever you want to say. Andy, before I throw to you, since we're talking about that studio, they've had guest hosts for Charlie's radio show for the last couple of days. Obviously, Vice President J.D. Vance did it. The Daily Wire guys did it. Megyn Kelly did it. And then my friend Glenn Beck had this nice moment.
I first met him. He was young. And I said, so what do you want to do? What is it you want? What do you want to do? So gracious, he said, I want to be you. I want to do what you do. Let me translate. I want to be Rush Limbaugh. He didn't want to be me. He wanted to be Rush Limbaugh. He wanted to be one of the, as Rush said, radio's greatest of all time. It was given to me after the death of Rush Limbaugh by his wife. It is Rush's golden microphone. What I would have said to Charlie was, you were thinking too small. I want to be Rush Limbaugh someday. I'm a broadcaster. Rush was a broadcaster. But Charlie was a broadcaster and a narrowcaster. Charlie was a pastor and a priest. And listening to the way he could argue and think differently, he was a rabbi as well, and one of the best. He was a political organizer. He was a political think tank himself. He was a compassionate friend. He surpassed Rush Limbaugh by miles.
Andy, it's an incredible tribute, obviously by Glenn right there. I guess it gets to the heart of what he did, what Charlie did, that we all know him for, which was he brought all of us together. I mean, Isabel just laid out how we all sort of had these connections with him. Glenn had these connections with him. Like all of us in this world, there's nobody that is in our world that did not somehow have a connection to Charlie because he talked to everybody. And that is the thing we need more than anything else. And that is the reason they took him.
So I've been tracking how some of the Antifa groups have responded to the assassination. You can expect no surprise. They celebrated. But then I read there was an after action report that was written by a group an Antifa group in Oregon. And they are actually a bit fearful now that they did not expect that there would be this unifying reaction from the right. They did not expect, for example, that many people who expressed open support for the assassination ended up being fired, being chastised. Jimmy Kimmel getting his show indefinitely suspended, things like that. They weren't expecting this. They thought, like after the attempted assassinations on President Trump, all these people celebrated, nothing happened to them. Life just went on like another day. But something has changed, and they notice it, and they're a bit afraid, actually. They mentioned that previously inactive conservatives are now becoming politically conscious. And they are saying, we need to come up with ways to sabotage what's happening, because this is catastrophic for us. Antifa can only really have power when there's a culture that accepts and tolerates their dehumanization of the other and their calls for violence. And for years, that has been the culture on the left in liberal cities in particular. And they have support from Democrat politicians and district attorneys and judges and all that. But something's changing. And so I hope that the American right, which is diverse and does have different beliefs that causes divisions right now, that can be minimized as much as possible to really sort of move forward. Because actually that after action report says divide and conquer, exploit the divisions that are existing on there to drive a wedge between different factions of the right. That's what they're saying to do.
Yeah, and you can feel that there's an effort to do that, and I think I actually don't want to get too far into it on this show because I've tried to basically avoid it for this week because I didn't think it was appropriate to dive into all of the fights. But it's going to be our job to keep this, let's say, loosely held group together amidst this tragedy. But there's some good signs. Listen to this from Benny Johnson. Turning Point USA is the fastest growing political organization in the entire world. Turning Point has received over 54,000 new chapter requests nationwide. Charlie Kirk's life goal was 20,000 chapters. It's more than doubled now. They tried to silence Charlie. They only made his movement unstoppable. This is Turning Point, and let me throw to a video. This is Charlie's longtime friend and executive producer, Andrew Colvett, talking about how happy Charlie would be. I have no doubt Charlie is watching us from up above and seeing the results of what has happened here.
I think he would be blown away, and he would be so happy. They're not rioting the streets, they're not burning down businesses, they're praying, and they're singing worship songs. And they are filling up church pews. And that's beautiful. I think he'd be really honored by that.
Well, that's it, right, Isabel? I mean, that's the thing that we have to take forward, as tricky as it might be, as we all get lost in whatever the political fights of today are and whatever they'll be next week. I mean, that really is the part that is eternal that we got to keep moving with, right?
It's really been sitting with me, Dave, the last few days. Andrew tweeted something along this regard, too, but Charlie didn't set out to have a revival of soul or a religious revival or even just searching for God, period, when he founded Turning Point USA. At least he never shared that with those of us who have known him and the organization for so long. my experience with Turning Point many, many years ago was that there were 3 key pillars, and that's all we really talk about, and that's what's going to unify all of our society. And it's limited government, free speech, and free markets. And if we can focus on those 3 pillars, we're going to bring over so many classical liberals. We're going to bring over people disenfranchised by the left. That was certainly your experience, Dave. But it's been astounding, really, in the last week or so to see that that's not really been the response from the whole world, from an entire generation of people that instead are messaging me, and I know you and Andy probably as well, by the thousands upon thousands. I just prayed for the first time today. I just purchased my first Bible today. I went to church for the first time last Sunday. You're watching hymns of amazing grace be sung by the tens of thousands on college campuses at candlelight vigils. You're just watching this soul reform and soul movement sweep across the nation and the world. I'm getting videos from, no pun intended, Seoul, South Korea, from South Africa, from London, from Spain, all over South America. I've heard from people in Malaysia and Nepal that they are praying for Charlie in their communities out loud. And this concept of the grassroots response to this, of we are Charlie Kirk, I think has been so moving to those of us who have been associated with Turning Point USA for so long and who have been fighting with Charlie on the political front, which can be very exhausting, as you both know. It's a very thankless job. It can feel like you're just swimming upstream, fighting for your life over and over again. I don't know if Charlie ever could have predicted that his greatest legacy and the greatest impact he would make on an entire generation was not to re-elect Donald Trump to the White House or to protect freedom of speech or preserve limited government and liberty from a political perspective, but to let people seek the source of liberty, which is God. I had the chance about 2 weeks ago to share the stage with Charlie at one of his last speaking engagements on this earth, and I'm thanking God for that every second of every day right now. But he said in this last speech that he was essentially rallying up a whole crowd of a multi-denominational church group. It was for a pro-life event. But ultimately, he said, when people start to taste the streams of liberty, they want to find its source. And liberty is not man's idea, it's God's idea. What a powerful, larger-than-life mission for him to give his life to, truly. But I can't imagine he would be prouder of anything else by what we're seeing from young people in their response.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have both seen it, but there's been this wonderful video of him talking to to a college student and talking about his religious beliefs and then how a government should operate, and that he wouldn't want America to become a theocracy, but there is a way to frame your beliefs around what he believed to be the best sort of religious beliefs. And I just thought it was just like, it was so subtle and thoughtful and not the way we do this ever. So, all right, we're going to continue, obviously, really the whole show in many ways has a through line of Charlie here. We're going to jump across the pond to something that happened where you are, Andy, in just a sec, but first, be better now. If you or your partner is over 55 and dealing with bladder urgency, you know it's more than just a minor inconvenience. Trips, outings, and travels start to feel like they're all about finding the bathroom. And when one of you has a hard time, you both feel it. That's why so many people have turned to Betterman and Better Woman. These are clinically tested formulas trusted by thousands for more than 25 years. They help reduce urgency, cut down frequent trips, and support deeper, more restful sleep. All natural with no known side effects. They also give you something just as important: more confidence, more control, and more freedom to enjoy life together. Get them at BeBetterNow.com. That's BeBetterNow.com. And for our listeners, you'll get 10% off your first order with code Rubin10. Live fully with confidence and control. So this actually is, I would say, ancillarily connected to Charlie. There was a absolutely massive rally earlier in the week. Probably, well, Andy, you probably have more specific numbers than I do, but they're saying 2 to 3 million people marching through London to unite the kingdom. They've had an awful lot of rallies for Hamas, an awful lot of rallies with Hezbollah flags and everything else. So some of this footage is quite shocking, actually. So, Andy, they're saying 2 to 3 million people. Everyone that's watching this show, we cover plenty of what's going on with the illegal immigration and migrant situation across Europe, and particularly the UK. Tommy Robinson, who I had back on the show literally 9 years ago, I can't believe it was that long, he was the leader of this thing. Elon Musk called in. It seems to me there has not been a lot. Oh, and by the way, there were a lot of people with Charlie Kirk signs and paying homage to Charlie and praying and all of those things. And obviously he represents a lot of what they're trying to restore in that country. It seems to me that maybe there's a little hope there where there has not been hope for a long time. You're over there in London. What did you see?
I think it was the largest demonstration that's happened in London since I've been here for 5 years. And it was even larger than the biggest pro-Gaza, pro-Palestine demonstration. And some of those were huge. Like, you couldn't even get a signal on your phone because there was just so many people. And this one was larger than that. It demonstrates that the popular sentiment on mass migration is they want it to stop. It has to stop. And governments have not been listening. Labor government ignores them. Conservative governments ignore them for so many years. And it's reached a boiling point. And I think we're seeing a breaking of the two-party system in the UK. The polling that shows how popular reform is existential to the two-party system right now. And it's going to be another 4 years before there's going to be another general election here. It's a very long time. But the UK really is at this point where this cannot go on anymore. You can't have thousands and thousands of people coming in every day and then immediately getting access to taxpayer-funded hotels, travel, stipends. Meanwhile, there's a cost of living crisis that's been going on since COVID. And so people are showing up, they traveled very far to get to the capital because most of these people don't live in London. They come in and they're doing all that they can do, which is to protest. And I think that the current government is going to just ignore it, you see, and they're just going to ignore them, and the media would just brand them, dismiss them as far right. But there is something happening, and the status quo is going to change one way or another.
And the reason I wanted to show that clip there was because, we're talking about Charlie. And as I said, there were obviously plenty of Charlie signs and people were talking about him. And Tommy Robinson brought him up when he gave the main speech and Elon brought him up when he brought the main speech. But it seems to me that in a country where you're having these, basically terror rallies every weekend, maybe they've had enough. You're right. The government maybe hasn't had enough. I agree. They're going to kind of ignore it. And here in America, we now have had enough of these people taking over our streets, and this happened yesterday from Donald Trump on Truth Social. I'm pleased to inform that our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Isabel, it seems to me that these things are not disconnected. When whatever the cry is against Western civilization, whether it's an Antifa mask or a Hamas mask or whatever, these massive rallies against the West, that perhaps the UK is going to, at least the people of the UK are going to try to take it seriously. That was their first salvo. But from an American perspective, now we are going to take it seriously via the government. And I think there's going to be major RICO cases here. It seems to me Trump's going to go after funding. I think we are going to find out an awful lot of things. And I think if I was Rashida Tlaib or some of those other people, I would be really worried about some of the NGOs that I've been working with.
As she should be, and many other people that we've suspected for a long time may have loose associations with some of these organizations. But Dave, if I can, let's just back up for a second here, because we did one of our episodes of the show about this week. I'm ecstatic that President Trump is declaring Antifa to be a terrorist organization. But I think for those of us who have been working in the movement for such a long time, this feels like such a late designation that we've been screaming from the rooftops for a decade that somebody please needs to pay attention to this. Andy mentioned this before we started our call as well, but there are many dozens of documented Turning Point USA events featuring Charlie Kirk over the last few years with violent Antifa protesters, not just holding up signs and screaming and making noise, but smacking people in the face with umbrellas, kicking open doors, smashing windows to try to force their way violently into buildings, punching students and physically assaulting students in the face, literally screaming, "We will kill you." I think we all remember quite recently Riley Gaines being detained inside of a classroom by these radically violent individuals. I was attacked by Antifa at Virginia Commonwealth University in April of 2023, where a 19-year-old girl was punched in the face, the student who invited us to campus, and I was detained alongside Kristen Hawkins civilians as the violent speaker that came to campus while these people were destroying property and physically assaulting young people. So I think it's great that we're going in this direction, but it's jarring, I think, for so many of us who have been videoing this, posting it, begging people to pay attention to this for such a long time, because to those of us that have been in the fight, it's incredibly obvious these are not isolated, singular violent events. They are incredibly interwoven and connected. Andy knows this better than anyone all around the world. And there seems to be some single origins here, at least in common thread ideology. We're now learning on the other end of Charlie's assassination that there have been radical, these Trantifa groups, to borrow your term, Andy, in the Salt Lake City area, operating for many, many years, including a group called Armed Queers of Salt Lake City that sent a delegation to Cuba in May of this year for armed Marxist revolutionary training, who, of course, were all posting online, we're now learning in advance of Charlie's assassination, saying something's happening at this campus tomorrow, but no one paid attention to it then. And now we're being told by the mainstream media, none of these things are interconnected. There's no common thread. There's no common funding. There's no common ideology here. This was just a crazy, deranged individual who may have, by the way, been acting in self-defense for their trans boyfriend against the violence of Charlie Kirk. So I'm incredibly excited to know that we are stepping in this direction, and I hope and I pray and I call upon the administration and anyone in positions of leadership and power to do everything they can to get to the bottom of this. But I hope and I pray we don't have another similar situation in the meantime, knowing that we've been screaming this from the rooftops for a very, very long time.
Andy, I know that Isabel gave you 20 avenues to go down there, but I must add that the first time that I became familiar with what Antifa was literally with you. The day I met you, you were a student reporter at Portland State University, and I was going to do an event with Peter Boghossian, a philosophy professor, and Christina Hoff Sommers, a feminist, and the protests we got, the fire alarms that were pulled, they called in bomb threats. There were people following us off campus. We had to have a police escort that hid us in a small room and then walked us to the stage and rushed us out. And you were a student reporter at the time. That's where we met. That was about 9 years ago. So talk about the slow roll part that Isabel's referencing there. The fact that so many of us have seen this forever. We've all seen the videos of the attacking college campuses and what happened when Ben Shapiro showed up to Columbia a few years ago, and the long list of all of that. There's plenty of video of me on college campuses with all the things that Isabel just described. What do you think? Well, I guess we all know what took so long. We had a Democrat administration, but do you think that the Charlie thing now was the final? I don't even want to say it, you get the reference, but it was the final move to make this happen?
I think so. Charlie brought it past the line because his murder then really made it clear to Trump that this so-called Antifa movement and ideology that's in the ether, and which was allegedly referenced in some of these rifle cartridges, by the way, it is radicalizing people towards violent murder. And there's been other assassinations done by self-described Antifa members. There was a Trump supporter in Portland during the 2020 riots in downtown Portland who was shot dead by a gunman who had a manifesto describing himself, "I am 100% Antifa." So there's been prior victims, unfortunately. And Isabel's very right to say it's been about a decade. It really has. People kind of forget. It's been really since 2016. Do people remember how Trump supporters who were going to his rallies before he became the nominee, how they were brutally beaten in cities like in the Bay Area, and there was one in San Jose, how people in Chicago were brutally beaten. Cars got smashed up when they were going back to their vehicles. They were prevented from leaving. So it goes back very long. And during the first administration, Trump did announce in 2020, actually, people didn't remember that he was designating Antifa a terrorist organization. He said it before, and I don't know where the messaging got lost because the then U.S. Attorney General did not pursue anything that could have been done at the federal level, like federal conspiracy charges, RICO, communicating threats through interstate on electronic devices. That's a federal crime. There's so many tools available. We don't need to get Congress to approve a whole bunch of new legislation. So my point is, time is of the essence. There's 3 years left in this administration. They're going to need a hell of a lot of creativity, resolve, and determination, because you can expect immediately the ACLU is lined up. They're going to try to say that Antifa is not organized in any way. It's simply an ideology against fascists and racists. They're going to argue that. You're going to have the media that's going to gaslight the entire public into thinking that Antifa is a figment of the far right's imagination, or if they're shown the videos of them committing violence, and they say, well, this is in the context of racial justice protests. So expect anybody who speaks out on this, they're going to be really ruthlessly smeared. So the administration they're going to need a lot of resolve. And
Andy,
I think they can do it. They can do it. The laws are there.
Let me ask you, I tweeted out something yesterday morning. It was just a thought that I had, but I think it's directionally right. And since you're the expert in this, I'm curious what you think. The last 10 days or so, there are no Antifa rallies. There's no Hamas rallies. Like, none of these things are happening right now. And that, to me, is proof that the Democrats can turn this, the Democrats or the NGOs, whatever that connection is there, they can basically turn it on and off at the same time, meaning that every time we see one of these protests, there's thousands of people, right? There's never a protest with 50 people. They can just basically turn it on and off at the same time. And I think right now it's off because, first off, America does not have the appetite for it right now. We would not put up with it to the backdrop of Charlie, but also because of what you just pointed out right there, that there now are going to be legal tools to really start figuring this stuff out. And someone is funding it. Someone is putting those placards out there for them every time. Someone's putting the t-shirts and the kefias and the masks and all that stuff. So I think there's a two-pronged thing. They fear the public now, finally, and now they're going to fear the tools of the government.
Well, with what Antifa are saying online, they are fearful, actually. Yeah, I think they really did not expect this type of reaction. They really thought they could get away with somebody allegedly on their ideological side getting away with another assassination, like so many people who have been maimed and injured and killed, and it just completely was ignored by the media, and therefore the wider public didn't know. But Charlie was too big of a person to ignore. They messed with the wrong person. That's what happened here.
We're going to talk more about the media component of all of this, which obviously has been, let's just say, a mixed bag at best. But first, 120 Life. Did you know that high blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for mortality? 1 in 2 adults have it, a 50-50 chance you're a walking time bomb. But here's the good news. You have the power to take control with 120 Life. It's a delicious blend of superfruit juices shown to help naturally lower blood pressure. Formulated with proven ingredients, 120 Life is trusted by over 1,000 health professionals and people just like you who've seen real measurable results. If you don't see results in 2 weeks, you'll get your money back, so you have nothing to lose but those high numbers. Try it risk-free with their 2-week trial. Just go to 120life.com and use code Rubin to save 15%. Watch your numbers drop and feel the difference. Okay, so earlier in the week, one of the sort of big snafus that I think hopefully has been put to bed at the moment is that Attorney General Pam Bondi made some very strange remarks as it pertains to hate speech, which of course does not actually exist. The Supreme Court has decided that you're allowed to say bad things about people. It can't translate into direct threats or action. If you're watching this, you know that because we do it almost every day. Even on The View, they defended the right to say mean things.
Bondi is blurring the lines when it comes to what constitutes hate speech, I think. And I just want to say, I always thought that this administration campaigned on ending the weaponization of free speech. Yeah. So I know there's a lot of stuff people say that I don't like. I don't like it. But as an American, I have the right to say I don't like it. And they have the right to say it. I will fight for their right to say stuff I don't like, because I will say stuff they don't like, and I don't want them up my behind about it either. So I don't understand.
That was a complete misstating of the First Amendment. Mm-hmm. And you sort of just kind of quoted Voltaire there. There's a famous quote, well, that's attributed to Voltaire. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Yes. That is what the First Amendment is all about. It's actually hate speech that is the most protected speech. Yes. The right to offend people in the public square.
So, Isabel, the reason I wanted to show that clip was because usually I put The View on to obviously mock the ridiculous things that they're saying and often confront the hate and racism that they are spewing. it was nice that they actually got one right there. And for the record, Pam Bondi did walk back the statements. She used the phrase hate speech again, even in her tweet sort of retraction, which I think was mistaken. But she did lay out what the First Amendment actually protects. But it was nice to see that even the ladies of The View, I suppose, can get one every now and again, right?
You know, Charlie always believed no one was too far gone, Dave. It's why he took it upon himself to interact with
Even
anyone
Whoopi.
and everyone. He sat down with Gavin Newsom, for goodness sakes, whose son apparently is the #1 Charlie Kirk fan on the planet. So I am
he's
very
going to be the co-CEO of Turning Point, probably. That would be what a nice
surprise to see that. But I also have to give some credit to the conservative movement on this one. One of the best lessons Charlie ever taught me when he was helping transition me into the world of commentary and content creation, whenever you would debate someone, he said, just take a deep breath and always try to keep your heart rate lower than the people that you're talking to. And certainly all of our heart rates are through the roof this last week. We're frustrated, we're angry, we're devastated, we're scared about what this means for the future of our own speaking engagements. I mean, there's a million different emotions going on all at exactly the same time, most of which is that we just feel lost. We feel lost without Charlie. And I think there's such an easy temptation to act out of a high heart rate in that capacity, to act out in anger, to act out in sadness and depression. But almost instantaneously, I saw basically every single leader of the conservative movement say, hang on a second, that's not what we believe. And that's not what Charlie Kirk gave his life for. We believe in defending this right to free expression for everyone, even those who are using it to be horrible human beings this week and saying awful things, but that's literally what Charlie gave his life for.
So speaking of saying horrible things and not great human beings, the other big story this week, which was directly connected to this, was that Jimmy Kimmel at least is temporarily suspended, although I suspect he is not coming back from his $100 million budget, $16 million salary show on ABC every night. We're going to show you the line that was finally the straw that broke the camel's back.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from.
Okay, so everyone watching this knows he was not a MAGA guy. By all accounts, he came from a decent family, and it wasn't until he went to college and then got involved in this trans ideology and everything else that he went overboard. Now, interestingly, and it's important to note, the FCC, although this is not an FCC violation as far as we know, the FCC does have regulations as to if you intentionally broadcast things that are against, we can get the exact verbiage on it, we showed it on the show yesterday, against the common good. If you knowingly do it, they could pull your license. However, that is not what happened here. The local affiliates, which many of them are from St. Clair, they got enough pushback, and people were like, we've had it with this guy. We also yesterday played videos of him talking about how people should be encouraged to blow up Tesla stations, when that was happening, and talking about how people who aren't vaxxed should just not be getting medical treatment. I mean, he has a long track record of being an overly partisan nutbag. Andy, you are an expert in cancel culture. We've all suffered from cancel culture one way or another. I think you probably more than anyone else. This is not cancel culture, is it?
First of all, I do want to react a bit to the Whoopi clip. I don't believe Whoopi. I don't believe the people on The View that this is genuinely a principled position that they've held, because otherwise, where the hell were you several years before, when people who were not spreading hate were accused of that and getting their lives destroyed through lies? And so my views on how we fight cancel culture, if you will, I think the conversation should move past that. But stepping back a bit, there has to be some sense of mutually assured self-destruction. That if you are going to establish these rules, then expect the other side at some point to step up to the game and play by those rules. And so I actually am quite, I like seeing that a lot of people are facing some accountability for lying and for celebrating murder of a person and for calling for or suggesting for others to be killed because of having similar views. I mean, there's two parts to the celebration. It's one, they're celebrating not just because it's Charlie Kirk, but because of the views that he holds and who he represents broadly more in America. And they would like those people killed as well. So, yeah, they set up the rules of the game, and they are now experiencing it. And I hope more of them do. And but I think I hope what's been eye-opening for those on the right is that really the discussion really shouldn't even really be about cancel culture anymore. You have a certain faction on the left that's not insignificant who do want you dead. And will create the environment where they might not be the one who stabs somebody or shoots somebody, but will create an environment where one of those people on their side feels emboldened to do it, feels like they'll become a martyr or a hero. You know, I mean, and I can point to so many examples. All those Antifa gunmen that I mentioned before, they're considered heroes. Luigi Mangione, suspect in an assassination, is a celebrity and hero, and they held a dance party to celebrate the terrorism charges were dismissed 2 days ago. So this is who we're dealing with, you know, and bringing it back to cancel culture, I think, is very 2019, 18. We're dealing with an assassination culture now.
For the record, I completely agree with that. I'm just talking about it from the perspective that they, over the last 2 or 3 days, have been saying, oh, you guys were against cancel culture, and here we are. I'm completely with you on that. And for the record, I'm also completely with you on what you said about The View, that it does ring a little hollow. This week, I happen to be trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt to the best extent. So that's why I thought it was worth playing that clip. You ever get cooking or grilling anxiety? You know the moment of truth when everyone sits down at the table, cuts into the steak or chicken, and you're holding your breath. Is it going to be raw in the middle? Did I just ruin $100 worth of meat? Am I about to serve up salmonella? This all changes with Chef IQ Sense, the wireless cooking thermometer that turns you into a master chef. It works with everything: grill, pan, searing, roasting, you name it. All you do is insert the sensor into your steak, chicken, or fish, open the Chef IQ app, and choose exactly how you want it cooked: rare, medium, well done, whatever it is. With multiple probes, everyone at the table can have their food cooked just the way they like it. Then just sit back and relax. Chef IQ Sense sends you real-time updates, when to flip, when to take it off the heat, even how long to let it rest. It's like having your culinary coach in your pocket. No more guessing, no more lid lifting, no more dinner disasters. Chef IQ Sense is precision cooking made simple. Once you try it, you'll wonder how you ever cooked without it. And right now you can get 20% off site-wide with code Rubin at chefiq.com. That's chefiq.com, promo code Rubin. So, of course, to the backdrop of Kimmel being quote-unquote canceled, the left is screaming about cancel culture. However, they had a slightly different tune over the years when people on the right were being suppressed and being silenced and canceled and algorithmically downplayed and everything else. Take a look.
Dishonest cries of censorship are filling Fox's airwaves with charges that these guys right here are being suppressed. The word censorship's been invoked almost 400 times on Fox this month alone, and more than 300 times on Newsmax. You know, post-insurrection, a book publisher decided that it did not want to be in business with Senator Josh Hawley. So he's been on a national TV tour claiming he's muzzled. Now, do these private companies have too much power? Sure. And many people would say yes, of course they do. But reducing a liar's reach is not the same as censoring freedom of speech.
It is rather extraordinary with these people, because not only subsequently do we all know that big tech was suppressing and shadow banning and all of the other terms, algorithmically manipulating and everything else, but what Stelter really was trying to do there was make sure that no advertisers would go over to Fox. So in light of what has now happened here with Jimmy Kimmel, it is, well, I guess I always say irony is dead. Like, should we just not be surprised by any of this, I suppose, Isabel?
No.
That they're going to take the complete reverse position now when it comes to Kimmel.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. And obviously that's what we expected. I mean, the behavior here is always a double standard of my truth is different from your truth. My consequences are different from your consequences. My reality gets to have completely different rules than the ones we set up for you. On one hand, I am slightly encouraged, Dave, by the fact that even the people who clearly don't mean what they're saying, who have railed against Charlie Kirk and said the most horrific things about him over the past few years, and I'm talking very high-profile Democrats and CEOs of companies and whatnot here, they feel enough public pressure to at least say something nice. On one hand, that lets me feel like we're doing something positive in the culture war and that we really have moved the needle to change where the general public is at. That gives me a lot of encouragement. On the other hand, I just have had enough with these people, frankly, and I just don't have any patience left. The number of interviews I have done this week where people have asked, that wonderful reporters have reached out from these adversarial organizations and news networks to say, we would love to pay tribute to your friend. Tell us about his legacy. Tell us about the impact that he's made with young people. And then halfway through, they'll sneak in the most vile, disgusting questions that try to smear his legacy, the things that he believed in. The number of times I've been told this week that Charlie Kirk hated minorities, that he hated the Civil Rights Act, he hated women. I mean, just the craziest things that are obviously not true. They genuinely think they can get away with this. And then the second we say that's a bold-faced lie and we try to push back on that a bit, they then cry cancel culture. But Riley Gaines characterized this really beautifully this week on Twitter. She calls it consequence culture, not cancel culture. And I've really spent some time thinking about this, that the primary difference between what's happening culturally now in the ramifications of these horrific lies being spread about Charlie versus what conservatives have been experiencing really since 2020 institutionally is that when conservatives were canceled in the midst of COVID and everything beyond then, people were trying to silence you for telling the truth. The fundamental difference now is that you are facing consequences for spreading ridiculous lies that are putting people's lives in danger.
You know, it's interesting because you mentioned that what they've said about Charlie and the Civil Rights Act, and Barack Obama himself this week basically said, and Charlie was against the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and I'm for it, and the audience gives him this huge round of applause. There are arguments to be made. There are libertarian arguments to be made that have nothing to do with hate or racism or bigotry as to why perhaps it should not. I'm not making that argument right this moment.
No, and in fact, the clip that they're referencing actually is Charlie going back and forth, just riffing with a college student on a campus where he says, I 100% support the intention behind the Civil Rights Act, that no person should be discriminated against based on their appearance or their identity. But now it's being manipulated and twisted intentionally to replace women in women's only spaces. And we're seeing all of these problems now. Maybe it's time we take a closer look. That, of course, then turns into Charlie Kirk is a Nazi who wants everyone dead. And then they are able to further their narrative.
What was the road to hell paved with again? I think it was, you got it. Let me show you two more here. Why don't we run both of these back to back? This is 2023 AOC talking to Jen Psaki, government operative Jen Psaki, about Fox News inciting violence, clearly trying to get them deplatformed. And then watch this brilliant flip of Chris Hayes, the Muppet on MSNBC, on what he said when Tucker got booted versus what he's saying now that Jimmy Kimmel's got booted.
We have very real issues with what is permissible on air.
Media organizations or social media platforms should be accountable for the role for being platforms for incitement.
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
ABC made the announcement Kimmel would indeed be taken off the air indefinitely. And this is just the latest chapter in Donald Trump's ongoing campaign to crack down on free speech, dominate the media, and essentially render the First Amendment meaningless. So it was for the journeyman cable news host Tucker Carlson, just fired from his third network. He believed he could say anything, no matter how vile, no matter how disgusting, no matter how offensive, no matter how dehumanizing or belittling. And if you act like a sociopath over and over and over and over, you will become unpopular on the national stage. That's just like a basic principle. Over time, probably not going to work out well for you in the long run. Eventually, people will be rightly offended, disgusted by it.
I mean, it's rather extraordinary to me that these people don't think the internet exists. Do they think they can not that they're going to take the complete polar opposite position in the most hyper-partisan way and that people on the internet are not going to clip it. Real quick, I've had my issues with Tucker over the past year or so. He never incited violence on Fox News. And had he, it would have been something for the federal government to deal with. And even though it was a Democratic administration back then, they didn't do anything. So that's with AOC. And then the Chris Hayes thing. Andy, the hypocrisy just shouldn't surprise us. And I guess basically what you said about mutually assured destruction is we just need to keep just moving forward and probably ignoring most of these people, I guess.
Yeah, these are disgusting frauds. I mean, if they care about limiting incitement to violence, I wonder why they haven't said anything about Blue Sky. Go on there right now and search name Andy Ngo, any of the Daily Wire names, and add in kill or murder and see how many examples you get that are on there that are not just one-off accounts, but are being shared thousands of times by people who feel actually quite emboldened about what happened to Charlie. So yeah, these are frauds, and I hope that the public keeps pushing back. What else can we do? It's just, I don't want people to get away with lies. Chris Hayes, MSNBC is the one that aired the comments that after Charlie was shot, that maybe it was one of his supporters that shot him.
Yeah.
Chris talking about sociopaths, you guys are the ones who are airing sociopaths. Who thinks to not just think that, but actually to go and say that to millions on air when somebody's being rushed to the hospital and bleeding out? So they're sociopaths. These, I'll try not to swear, but I get so angry. MSNBC is the one that has one of its senior reporters, Brandy, going on a few days ago saying that there's no celebration happening on the internet. Disgusting liars, frauds, liars, sociopaths. That's them.
Right. It's that Solzhenitsyn quote. It's like, they know they're lying. We know they're lying. They know we know they're lying, and they continue to lie. It is rather extraordinary. Guys, we're going to actually drop the final segment was going to be about some of the underbelly of the internet, Twitch and Reddit and some of those places, which I know you're both sort of experts in your own way because you're a little younger than me. But why don't we leave it there for now? I normally end our Friday show asking my guests, what fun thing are you doing this weekend? Isabel, I know what you're going to be doing this weekend. So I'll ask you both this. What do you think is the main thing that people can take with them into this weekend after an extremely difficult week going forward? Not everyone's going to be at the memorial that we're going to be at, but what do you think everyone should take after this week? Isabel, you first.
The darkness is angry and the demons are getting very loud, and there's so much hate and backlash to what we're seeing right now in the wake of Charlie's death. But good always wins in the end. And the light that we're seeing come out of this, the joy people are experiencing, and the resolve to continue fighting for what is good and true and beautiful. Courage is contagious, and a whole generation is about to prove that to the world.
Isabel, people know that Dave Rubin only gives a 5-second hug because people always want to hug me for an extended period. You're getting the extended hug on Sunday. Andy,
good. I'm looking forward to it.
Andy, what can we take into the weekend?
To remember that those celebrations, those disgusting celebrations we saw of murder, are not quite isolated, unfortunately, and that there is a cancer that exists on a significant fraction of the left. And to think about that and have it be a red-pilling moment, I'll say.
Charlie, that is the end of a rough week. I hope we made you proud, and we'll see you and all the people that love you on Sunday. Guys, no post-game show on Friday. We'll see everybody else on Monday. Thanks for watching.